You know that feeling when you close a book you just couldn't put down? You just sit there and think, wow, that was a great book. Sometimes you don't even want to move because something happened to you in those pages. Now here's the question for you. When the day comes to close the book on your own life, will you feel the same way about your own story? Because there's one choice you're making right now that will decide how your story ends. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that choice is. So, let's talk about something most people have a hard time talking about, even though it's one of the most important times in one's life. And that is when we come to the end of our life here on Earth. And from what I've experienced, many people believe that the end of their life will be decided by the big things. Did I accomplish enough? Did I matter? Did I make a difference? But after 41 years of sitting with people in my therapy office as a psychotherapist and living 77 years of my own life, I don't believe that's what really matters when someone's story ends. And I'll tell you why. I've sat across from people who've gone through things I can barely describe. Cruelty, abandonment, betrayal. And some of them are the most peaceful people I've ever met. And yet, I've sat across from people whose lives, on paper, look almost enviable. Good marriage, good career, good health, and they're not at peace at all. And I found myself wondering, what is it that lets one person who had a rough life look back and feel at peace with it, while another who had far fewer challenges cannot find that same peace? And what I've discovered after all these years is this. The difference between the two was never about what happened to them. It was this. Those who were not at peace carried regret, anger, hurt, and resentment. And the ones who were at peace found a way to let all of that go. And how did they do that? It came down to one choice. The same choice available to all of us that we can start right now. Do I forgive? Or do I keep holding on to what happened? Now, that's a huge choice. And here's why it's so important for you and for me. Because at the end of our story, the most important feeling we want to have is peace within ourselves. And we only experience peace when we let go of something. So when you can feel at the end of your life that you have no ill feelings towards yourself or another, it will be so much easier to let go and go home. So when I talk about forgiveness, it may not be the version most of us were taught. The one that says you have to be the bigger person or reconcile with the person who hurt you, which of course makes us wonder, why should I forgive someone who isn't sorry, doesn't deserve it, or has never taken responsibility for what they did? Isn't that letting them off the hook? Some of you may feel that way, and I get it. But today I'm talking about a very different kind of forgiveness that has very little to do with them and everything to do with you. If this conversation is touching something in you, I'd love for you to join our community. We are so close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers. And having you here helps this message reach more people who might be struggling. So please subscribe and share your thoughts below. I read and answer every single comment because your story matters to me. So, let's start where forgiveness really begins. With you. I want you to ask yourself something. Is there anything you still haven't forgiven yourself for? Something you're still carrying? Maybe it's a decision you made, something you said, someone you hurt, someone you couldn't save. Maybe it's the parent you wished you'd been, or maybe it's simply believing you should have known better. Just notice what comes up. Because chances are, something came to your mind the minute I asked that question. But if nothing did, that's okay. Just sit with it after this video, because whatever you're still carrying against yourself, that's where forgiveness needs to begin. And here's how we finally put that burden down. It's called compassion for yourself. And compassion sounds like this. If I could have done better, I would have. Now, that doesn't mean you didn't know better. because sometimes we do know better. But here's the most important thing to remember. Knowing better and being emotionally able to do better are not the same thing. At that moment in your life, something inside you was getting in the way of being your best self. And most of the time, it's almost always an old wound of some kind hanging around. And here's what I mean. Long ago, as a younger version of myself, I once stole a dress from a store. I knew it wasn't right, but I did it anyway. Why? What if I'd been caught? I would have been so embarrassed. So why would I take that risk? I didn't even think about it at the time. I just did it, and thank God I wasn't caught. It wasn't until years later I realized I stole because a part of me felt deprived. Deprived of clothes? No. Deprived of love. And sometimes we don't know how to express that deprivation other than by trying to fill an emptiness we don't even know is there. That's why we act out in ways that make no sense until we finally understand the pain underneath it all. So when I picture myself as that young woman now, I feel compassion for her because I now understand why she did it. So when we make mistakes and fall short, sometimes it's simply because we're young and emotionally immature. Other times, it's because we're carrying wounds that haven't healed yet. So when you're able to say, I wish I had handled that differently, I regret it, but at that point in my life, I wasn't emotionally capable of showing up the way I would now. That's not letting yourself off the hook or giving yourself a pass. That's the truth. And this is why forgiveness is so important to how your story ends. Because when you have enough compassion to believe in your heart of hearts that you could not have done better at that particular moment in your life, it changes the way you see everyone else as well. Every single one of us can only respond from the level of healing and emotional awareness we've reached at that point in our lives. And that's where forgiveness for others begins. Now here's where it gets harder for some of you, and I want to walk through it with you. I know some of you have lived through profound abuse, and I know that forgiveness may be something that's very hard to hear. I understand that because I've lived through abuse as well, and I have felt the same way. So I'm not asking anyone to excuse what happened. I'm simply asking you to consider a different way of understanding forgiveness for yourself and others. In fact, I used to think I was pretty good at forgiveness until one day when I had a session with my spiritual mentor. I was talking about my mother and how I had forgiven her, and I said these words, and maybe you've said them too. I said, you know, Julian, I have forgiven my mother. I just haven't forgotten. Does that sound familiar to any of you? And then he replied very lovingly and said, then you haven't truly forgiven. I was stunned. I said, what do you mean? I can't just forget what happened. He smiled and said, oh, I know that. I'm not talking about the memory. I'm talking about the resentment I felt from you when you said that you had forgiven her. There's still a negative charge in there, isn't there? And I had to admit, he was right. I could say the words I had forgiven her, but the resentment was still very much alive. And then he said something I've carried with me every day since. Dear Connie, when you truly forgive, whether it be yourself or another, you no longer choose to carry those negative feelings. You can still remember the memories, but the feelings no longer own you. Forgiveness really is about forgetting, not the memories, but the hurt, anger, and resentment you've carried. Let them go. They don't hurt anyone but you. This is true forgiveness, and this is where you will find your peace. Now, what he said is not for the faint of heart, I know, because it can feel like quite the task. But he was so right. To this day, the more I let go of self-judgment toward myself and replace it with compassion. The more I feel it for everyone else, no matter the person. And with that is a freedom I've never felt before. And that's why I'm passing this wisdom on to you, because I want that same freedom for you. It doesn't matter how old you are, but the older you get, the more important it becomes. Now is the time. There may be days when regrets come to visit, or days when old hurts find their way back into your mind. But when that happens, don't start the story all over again. Remind yourself, if I could have done better, I would have. If they could have done better, they would have. Because every time you let go of a little more regret, a little more resentment, you keep moving toward peace. And that's a gift you're giving to your future self, because it's your future self that's going to be there at the end of your story. So when would now be a good time to start? So, you know that feeling when you close a book you just couldn't put down? And you know that everything that character went through, every loss, every joy, every mistake, none of it was wasted? What a beautiful thing it would be when the day comes to close the book on your own life. You can smile and quietly say, wow, that was a great book. And if any part of you is still holding on to regret, not just toward others, but toward yourself, I actually go much deeper into another video, Stop Feeling Guilty About Your Regrets. It picks up right where this leaves off. So if you want to keep going, that's a great place to head next. So take time to remember, there really is no one worth knowing more than you. And I so appreciate you watching. I'll see you in the next video.